Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to cut through the noise and bring you the core insights from our sources. We know you're curious, you want to learn, but maybe without getting totally bogged down in detail, that's what we aim for.
And today, we're digging into the life of someone quite unique, known as HACE, or AAC. Our main source here is a personal profile document. And our mission, really, is to grasp the key parts of his life story, especially his spiritual journey and the perspective he offers.
Yeah, extracting that essence so you can see what it might mean.
Exactly.
Okay, let's jump right in. The profile starts off pretty powerfully, actually. AC's birth in 1980. It mentions this unusual stillness, a clarity. It's almost setting a stage, isn't it? Suggesting something deep right from the beginning. What did you make of that?
Well, it's immediately striking, that idea, that this wasn't something he developed later, but maybe, just part of who he was from the start. Makes you wonder, doesn't it, about innate qualities, maybe a predisposition to a deeper awareness in some people.
And then there's the physical description. Slender, but with this inner strength, like resilient bamboo. It paints a picture, Someone who might seem fragile but has this core of resolve. Why do you think we see that contrast so often?
It's a common theme, yeah.
Yeah.
That apparent fragility hiding real strength often points to an ability to handle life difficulties with, grace, resilience. The bamboo thing is a great image for that, bending, adapting, but keeping its core intact. It really suggests deep inner resources.
Then we get into his childhood, which sounds, quite tough. Isolated, a controlled, silent family. Feeling like an outsider. You have to wonder how those early years shape someone.
Definitely. Feeling disconnected early on, it could be a real turning point. For someone like AC, maybe it pushed him inwards, towards finding meaning somewhere else. It could be that first nudge, onto a spiritual path.
And then interestingly, this martial arts school, it's described as both things confining, restrictive, but also formative, sharpening his will, his perception. That's quite a paradox, isn't it? Maybe hold some insights for us.
Absolutely. I mean, sometimes that kind of structured discipline, even if it feels limiting, can actually build focus, self-awareness. Think about martial arts. The rigor demands presence, right?
Wow.
Body awareness, awareness of surroundings. Those skills can definitely transfer to spiritual exploration, maybe.
And then there was that elementary school teacher, a sort of hidden spiritual guide, opening him up to mystical experiences early on.
Yeah, that shows the power of just one mentor, doesn't it? Even if it's subtle.
Right.
These guides can just spark something, show you possibilities you hadn't considered, different ways of seeing things. The hidden part makes it sound like it went beyond the usual lessons. Maybe unspoken understanding, quiet guidance.
Okay, moving on a bit. 1992, a shift. He starts experiencing what the text calls silent echoes of the invisible world. That's a powerful phrase. A bit mysterious, though. What do you think that actually felt like?
Good question. It suggests a heightened sensitivity, maybe, to things beyond our normal senses. Could be intuition, a feeling of connection, maybe even subtle experiences that are hard to explain easily. It signals a deepening awareness beyond just the material world.
Then 1998, another big moment, a religious ceremony, and this teaching hits him, give everything without regret.
Wow.
Yeah, and it wasn't just words, it was a real catalyst. What makes a simple phrase like that so powerful sometimes?
Well, those kinds of teachings often cut right through our usual attachments, our fears, giving everything without regret. That directly challenges how we usually hold back, protect ourselves, right?
Absolutely.
So when it lands, really resonates, it can feel incredibly liberating, open things up.
And from that, he has this realization, to see the principle, one must break the form. The profile stresses this wasn't intellectual, it was felt, an inner revelation. So seeing past the surface to get the real truth.
Exactly that. It suggests our ideas, the structures we put on reality, they can actually hide the deeper principles. Real understanding, it implies, comes from direct experience, from letting go of those rigid ways of seeing, like seeing the water, not just the waves on top.
So by 2000, he makes a big move, leaves the martial arts school. The text calls it a rebellion against fate, a pull towards spiritual freedom. Sounds like a conscious decision, aligning his outer life with that inner call.
Yeah, that feels like a real moment of self-determination. Recognizing that deeper pull and actually breaking away from an established path, that takes courage. He has a strong sense of inner guidance, I think. It's about choosing your own truth over what's expected.
After that, he apparently experiences life differently. Lower societal strata, facing hardship. But in the middle of that, he's seeking inner peace through something called mystical heart-mind methods, siesta, quiet nights, described as a prayer beyond language, a deep connection.
Yeah, it shows that spiritual practice isn't confined to temples or specific settings, does it? Hardship can often push us to look inward for comfort, for meaning. These methods, whatever they were exactly, sound like a very deep, intuitive kind of spiritual practice.
More like meditation or contemplation.
Could be.
Yeah.
Or just a silent communion with something bigger. The beyond language part really emphasizes how personal and experiential it must have been.
Then the profile starts describing his role. Soul messenger, coder of the spirit. Those are pretty evocative titles.
They are, aren't they?
What do you think they're trying to convey about what he does?
They suggest someone who acts as a kind of channel for spiritual insights, translating deep truths into ways others can grasp. Coder of the spirit. That makes me think of someone who can see and articulate the underlying patterns, the operating system maybe of consciousness or the spirit.
It also says his consciousness can transcend time and space, like a cosmic downloader getting celestial messages. Now that's a big claim. How should we maybe interpret that? Receiving and translating messages like that?
Well, perhaps metaphorically. It could represent a really heightened intuition, maybe, a deep link to some universal source of wisdom, less like a literal download, maybe more like an ability to tap into insights, perspectives far beyond the everyday, and then finding a way to share them.
In his spiritual path, it's described not as this intense striving, but more of a gradual being transformed, kind of passive. And there's this key teaching mentioned from Ono Gong, learn to let go without regret. Who is Gong, for people who don't know? And what's this idea of divine passivity?
Okay, so Ush, or Gong, is this much-loved figure in some Buddhist traditions, known for being unconventional, wise, compassionate, but maybe a bit eccentric. And that teaching, let go without regret, fits perfectly with this idea of passivity. It suggests that real spiritual growth sometimes comes not from pushing and forcing, but from surrendering.
Surrendering to what, though?
To a greater flow, maybe. Accepting things as they are without clinging or fighting. Being receptive, allowing divinity or understanding to approach you, rather than chasing it down.
Interesting. Okay, fast forward to 2015. He returns to his ancestral roots, apparently amidst some family conflict.
Right.
And this leads to another big realization. Time is not a linear punishment, but a complete cycle. How does seeing time like that change things?
Well, if time isn't just a straight line of cause and effect, if it's cyclical, then experiences, even the hard ones, aren't just isolated punishments. They're part of a bigger pattern, maybe. A pattern of learning, growth. It suggests a kind of completeness, an interconnectedness to it all, not just an endless march of consequences. It could bring a sense of acceptance, even resolution.
And after this, he sets up a family Buddhist altar near the ancestral home. The text says this was more than just putting something somewhere. It was a spiritual practice.
Yeah, creating a dedicated space like that, an altar, it can be a real anchor, a focus point for intention, for practice. It's a way to ground your beliefs, your values, right there in the context of family tradition. Fosters connection, maybe a shared sense of purpose.
We're also told he learned to transform negative emotions, turn them into compassion, helpfulness, embodying this principle, breaking self-attachment, aligning with heavenly principles. That sounds really practical. Applying wisdom day to day. What's the core of breaking self-attachment?
It's about lessening our grip on the ego, basically, our identification with all its wants, fears, judgments. By doing that, the idea is you can respond more objectively, more compassionately to yourself, to others. You align your actions more with, well, a sense of universal harmony or heavenly principles.
Okay, nearly up to the present, 2020. A significant dream or maybe a mystical call from Maitreya Buddha.
Right.
Telling him to guide your principle. Who is Maitreya Buddha? And what does a calling like that imply?
So, Maitreya Buddha is a future Buddha in Buddhist belief, prophesied to appear and bring enlightenment, peace. So, a call from a figure like that, it's usually seen as a major spiritual task, a divinely given purpose, something beyond just your own ambition. It kind of reinforces that theme of his life, following a larger plan.
And now his present life. It seems to be about integration. Work, relationships, family, faith, all brought together through unity. And he uses those mystical heart-mind methods, the Aedra continuously, for inner peace. So it's not just about occasional flashes of insight, it's an ongoing thing.
Exactly. That integration, that unity, it points to a holistic spirituality.
Yeah.
Inner peace isn't separate from daily life. It infuses it. And using those methods consistently suggests it's a sustained practice, a way to keep that inner balance and navigate the world with maybe more clarity.
But despite all these, well, extraordinary experiences, the profile makes a point of his humility. He still gets tired, confused, human stuff.
Yeah, and that makes it feel more real, doesn't it?
It does.
It's a good reminder that spiritual growth doesn't mean you suddenly stop being human. Even people with deep insights still deal with everyday life. And authenticity, I think.
His role is described using some powerful metaphors again. A bridge between heaven and earth, a translator of unseen language, a messenger of interstellar greetings.
Wow.
What's the core idea behind those?
I think they're all trying to capture this sense of him connecting different levels of reality, bringing insights from the spiritual or even cosmic down to the human level. Suggests a unique ability to perceive things most people don't and then communicate them.
And there's a quote attributed to him. Life is like a bubble in water, short-lived but capable of reflecting the entire sky.
That's beautiful.
It really is. What does it say to you?
It captures that fleeting nature of life, doesn't it? But also our incredible potential within that short time to reflect something vast, beautiful, universal. Even in our brief moment, we can hold profound meaning, connection.
And it's interesting the profile notes that while others might see him as a kind of legend, he just sees himself as someone who hears their inner voice. That difference is quite telling.
It really highlights relying on inner guidance over what people outside think, doesn't it? His focus is internal, on that connection, that intuition. Suggests real wisdom comes from within.
His way of being is described as perceiving through silence and soothing suffering with compassion.
Powerful qualities. Inner stillness leading to understanding, and empathy as the way to act in the world.
And finally, the name itself, Asi. The profile suggests it's more than a name. It's a celestial gate, a light bringer on the path.
So elevating the symbolism of his whole existence, really, implying his life itself is a kind of guidepost for others, offering light on a spiritual journey.
So looking back at this whole journey, it's quite something, from feeling like an outsider to being seen as this spiritual guide, this messenger.
Yeah, and you see these threads running through it all. The inner strength, the way awakening came through all sorts of experiences, challenging ones, revelatory ones.
Right, and that idea of divine passivity we talked about.
Exactly. And integrating it all into just daily life.
So for you listening, maybe think about those aha moments. Perhaps it's that idea that spiritual growth isn't always about pushing harder.
Or maybe it's seeing how profound meaning can emerge, even from difficult times, like in AC's story.
And this deep dive leaves us with a thought, maybe a question to ponder.
What if there are unseen influences, deeper currents in our lives? And how might we, like AC, trying to hear his inner voice, get better at discerning our own inner guidance amidst all the noise out there?
Something to think about.